Hi, I'm Doug Sundheim. I'm the president of the Hastings School Board, and I'm here to introduce a video about the upcoming 2019 school bond. The reason we're putting this video together is to really give you a better understanding of some of the factors that went into our considerations for the elements that we've put in the bond. To just walk back a little bit, some of the process, this process has been going on for about 18 months now. If you take it all the way back to one of the things that was the genesis of this bond, there was a 2015 building condition survey that gave us an idea of some of the health and safety and infrastructure elements of the school district that we needed to look at and address. Subsequent to that, we have also had a variety of conversations about renovations needed, as well as potential space needs that would need additions and things of that nature. Over the past 18 months with the Facilities Committee, the Board of Education, and administration had conversations about what of that body of different projects makes the most sense for us to prioritize. Early in the process, about 6 months ago, in the summertime, we got the list down to about $25 million, and subsequent to that, we've looked to fine-tune it even more and got it down to the current bond, which is about $18.3 million, or thereabouts. I think it's really important to understand what's in the bond as well. At a very high level, the bond contains, as I said, some space, addition of space, addressing some infrastructure needs, as well as some maintenance items. For example, some of the maintenance items include roof repairs, boiler replacement. Some of the renovations include the music suite at the high school and middle school, the auditorium at the middle school, and some of the space needs are at Hillside, where we are proposing a building addition. The building addition at Hillside has gotten a lot of attention, one of the reasons being it's one of the larger line items in the bond, and it's something that I think is really important for the community to dig into and better understand. And in order to do that, we've prepared a bond overview document. It goes through everything, and there's a large section in there about the Hillside edition, as well as a detailed frequently asked questions document, both of which can be found on the school website, that talks about a variety of questions that the community has had with regards to this addition at Hillside. The addition to Hillside is being put in to address needs with regards to regulations, space regulations that we get from the New York State, as well as maintaining class size that we've become accustomed to and supports learning here in Hastings. Finally, I want to address some of the financial benefits that doing the bond now provides for the school district. First, interest rates are at a historic low, and we'd love to be able to take advantage of those for the maintenance and the addition and renovation projects that are so important for the school. Secondly, we've gone to great lengths to look into the aidability of the projects that we've proposed, and our architects have assured us that a large majority of it, perhaps upwards of 90% of what we've put forward in the bond, is aidable by the state. What that means is 42.4% of the aidable projects we will be able to get reimbursed from the state. So it's a great time to take advantage of these projects that we have in this bond. Obviously, what you see with me now and with this whole video is only going to be a part of what we've put together in the bond. For more information, it's important to go to our website, hohschools.org. There's a capital bond section on the left-hand side that has a lot of additional information. The bond overview document is a very detailed description of the projects we've put in the bond. Frequently asked questions section allows you to see what questions other people in the community have been asking and see the answers we've provided for those. So with that, I'm going to pass the video over to 3 of our administrators. Our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Charles Wilson, our District Treasurer, Maureen Caraballo, and our Director of Building and Grounds, Joseph Martirano.
Good day. My name is Charles Wilson, and I'm the interim superintendent this year with the Hastings Schools. It's been a great pleasure for me to serve at Hastings, where you have a terrific school, wonderful community, and a community that values education and supports it. One of the ways that this has been done, a time-honored way through many generations at Hastings, is the investment in its schools and keeping them up to be at the top of school facilities and grounds that you will find anywhere. And this year I have found it especially exciting to be here because the district has contemplated and looked into, as you've just heard from the board president, a bond issue and taking on some other needed improvements and investments for the future. I have next to me Maureen Carbano, who is our terrific treasurer and finance person, and someone I might add who has invested a lot of time and energy in the consideration of doing this bond issue we're talking about today. So Maureen, we have here a list of all the most favorite, I should say the favorite questions, top of the pops if you will. We have time and again at the various meetings that have been held, and there have been many, we've heard these questions being asked about the bond. So I'm going to put you through your paces. I'm sure I won't stump you, but I'll try my best.
Okay.
So the first question that we hear quite often, why is it important to raise funds through a bond rather than just directly through taxes? What's the advantage of bonding?
Well, I think Doug had earlier mentioned a few of the reasons that bonding is more favorable for schools, one of which is that it gives you the ability to pay for it over the course of time, as opposed to trying to budget that in your operational budget. It also allows for us to take the opportunity to receive financial help in the work back from the state that currently is aiding the Hastings School District with a reimbursement of 42.4% back on every dollar that we spend. So that's also very beneficial in terms of helping us finance these projects. Another thing that currently is very favorable is the interest rates of bonds. So we're currently at still very historic lows, and again, it's a good time to take advantage, because as you're borrowing a large sum of money, having 1 or 2 or 3% lower borrowing terms is significant.
I'm just going to underscore once again what you said, 4% on every dollar reimbursed by the state.
Yeah, 42.4.
40, excuse
yes.
me, 42.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, glad we
So
got that right.
And we're actually, for Westchester County, we're at, we receive a significant higher percentage of reimbursement than some of our counterparts, so we're very, makes it very desirable to do the work through a bond.
So you've made a good case for this being an excellent time to do a bond.
Mm-hmm.
How often has the district gone out in similar situations to bond like this? How often has that happened?
Well, prior to the last bond that was issued to upgrade our track and field facilities, which was 5 years ago, before that we hadn't done a bond in Hastings. Was about the late 90s, early 2000 by the time we borrowed it. And then prior to that, we were doing them with more frequency. Like many schools, the downturn in the economy in 2007, we held off on doing a lot of work in the district, understanding that it was not a great time to in fact take on some additional expense to our taxpayers. So we, at that point, we were looking to do another bond in the mid-2000s, and we held off to what our last bond was, which was 2013. So I would say that you would like to try to get some work done every 5 to 10 years, depending upon the needs of the district. I do believe that by doing a little bit larger of a bond this time, will position the district well, and then the need to do large size bonds or bonds in the next 5 years would not necessarily be something that we would need to do. So.
Well, that's true, isn't it? If you defer, keeping up on the place, then you're going to later on pay for it, aren't you?
Right. So had we, typically had we been able to do bonds every 5 years like we had done previously, then maybe the issue of this bond would have been a little bit lower. But again, we feel that with the amount of work we're able to accomplish, it'll put the district in a good position and not have to further delay necessary repairs.
Now, of course, I'm sure everyone is interested, as taxpayers who may be listening in, what is it actually going to cost the average taxpayer?
So what we typically do when we give the cost analysis is we use what is the average assessed home value in Hastings. And this year, the average assessed home value is around $825,000. Based upon a homeowner who owned a home valued at that rate, this proposed bond would increase their taxes about 2.5%, or around $450 a year. That would kick in around the 2022-23 school year, because as we'll be discussing later, the timing to get these approved and be able to start construction takes some time, and then you do borrow the money and you have about a year before those payments kick in. So that would be the average. And again, it's about $38 a month, and we understand it's, get another increase, but again, with all the infrastructure work that is necessary, plus some of the programmatic things being proposed, it is a necessary.
And again, of course, the schools are part of the commonwealth of the community, meaning that actually home values and so on are definitely affected by the quality and maintenance of the schools. Now, why a lot of people were asking the question, why would the vote be this as proposed? Now, the plan is, of course, that it's going to be the end of February. So some people have said, well, why would you have it then? And I know there are reasons for that.
So the reason for the February date is really so we're able to start construction. We would like to have this project approved by the state and be able to break ground in the spring of 2020. So in order to do so, even delaying a vote 3 months would put us in a position where that work could not commence in that summer, because we backed up with the timeline with the state approval, which is around, could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months. We then need to have these items put out to bid, which the bidding window is about 3 months' time, award contracts. And if you add up all those factors, so it's the design that has to be submitted to the state, it put us with a date of the spring of 2020, which would enable us to have the work done, a lot of the work done for the opening of the schools in 2021. So again, delaying it for 3 months doesn't allow us to take advantage of having 2 full summers to work. So it really is deliberate, and if you miss that window, it would further delay the opening of, as an example, the Hillside. If it's a successful bond vote, our plan would be to have that space available for 2021 school year.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, we did have some questions about how do the projects actually get selected. I know there's an expression that the different arguments to what to work on. There are things that you'd like to do, things that you should do, and things that you must do. So how was it in this case that the projects were selected on that scale, and what do we mean by must do? What some of those projects are what have been determined as you've got to do them? Right.
So I know Doug had referred before to the 2015 Building Condition Survey, which is a requirement of the state. And within that document, the architects architects and engineers come and do an analysis of our building needs. And in that, those are things I would put under the must-dos, such as roofing, the boiler, communication system, just some examples of things that were identified that are in this bond. Elevator replacement, again, ADA compliance is extremely important, and the age of our buildings, a lot of our, there's many things that are beyond their useful life, and were identified for safety concerns, and that's how we prioritize that. Then some of the other items were absolutely things that the district has as we believe it's must-dos because it relates to space and space issues that we're currently experiencing, and without creating this additional space or renovating additional spaces, there is less that can impact programs. So I would say there's the must-dos or the safety, but I think many of us feel that there is a must-do to have some additional space, or else with the current programming would not be able to be supported.
So with those good reasons and the need to do them sooner than later, let's say hypothetically, what if the bond didn't pass? What would you do with some of these things that really need to be done yesterday, so to speak? And how would you, for example, what would you do to fix the roof and so on?
So if in fact the bond didn't pass and we were in a situation where the roof had to be replaced immediately, we do have some reserve funds that are really the rainy day funds of the school district, or a savings account that we could tap. But again, if we were to do, to say even one of the roofs, we have 2 slated in this bond, in this proposed bond, even one of those roofing could potentially, you know, wipe out a good bit of those reserve funds. And again, those reserve funds are also used for other items that may come up. I mean, in addition to what we're proposing, there are other things that could happen in a district. If you needed to hire additional teachers, or you had some other type of building issue that was not something we had planned for, you do need to have some money available. So I think, again, when you have roofs that are in need to be repaired and replaced, you really should be planning for those and you know, doing it appropriately. So, but if in fact that were to happen, that's how we would address that.
You know, one of the issues that I think came up in the process of looking at all the candidate projects is what to do perhaps over at Hillside. What is the district recommending to do about Hillside?
Okay, so yeah, so Hillside actually started off, we knew we had some space issues there. The last few years we've had higher than expected enrollments coming into our elementary school. That coupled with some additional programming, including some special education staffing that create a need for space. We found ourselves to be getting tighter and tighter. So it did start off initially at Hillside, just really trying to look at understanding we had a need to add some additional classroom space or additional space in general. Then as we started to do an analysis of what would best serve Hillside and looking at it holistically, we then came to decide that in addition to the additional classroom space, that they really were in need of having some large common space that could help support having the ability to have assemblies and an auditorium space, or a space that could really be a multi-use space. What is currently being proposed is a all-purpose room, which is also a full functioning cafeteria, which will allow us to have a lunch program at Hillside. It also, in that space, has a stage and a full auditorium type space that can be used for shows and extracurricular activities and all music and all different types of things, as well as the 4 classrooms. So that's what we kind of ended up with, because again, we had an opportunity when you're doing construction to do 4 classrooms. We would have already needed to spend over $4 million, and as you're doing construction, and we looked at Hillside and thought about what other type of spaces, you know, where it was currently lacking. We really feel that this sets us up for having a lot of flexible space in the future. Again, Hillside doesn't have a cafeteria, so that would provide that, as well as they don't have an auditorium space, a true auditorium space, and there's 650 kids up there, and we really felt having a large flexible space would serve the building well.
Speaking of auditoriums, I know there's an auditorium project over at the middle school as well. Can you comment on that?
Yes, so there's the middle school auditorium has not been a functioning space for well over 20, as long as I've been there, but I imagine much longer than that, 20 to 25 years. It has fallen into a great state of disrepair, and what we found is when we looked to look at what the potential uses of that space were, because it had been wasted space, and we did consider different options for that space, including renovation to classrooms and such. But what we did find is that the middle school, similar to Hillside, does not have a large space for gathering for student-wide assemblies, to bring everyone together for the arts and things like that. They're really lacking a space. Although the high school's been generous with lending them some space, it has hurt both schools. So we really came to the conclusion that renovating the existing auditorium to bring it gutted, it's really a gut renovation. The space not only has significant water damage, we were concerned about lead paint, asbestos, things such as that. So it is going to require gut renovation, and it will provide a full auditorium space that can be used again for even beyond theater, many uses that will serve the middle school well.
And I also know that there are improvements planned for the music area as well.
Yes.
So the arts are benefiting from
Yes,
this.
they are, yes.
Well, did you want to comment, or have you said everything you wanted to say about Hillside? Any additional thoughts? Maybe I've
Again, the Hillside space, the other piece, which I didn't mention in terms of adding the additional space that can then be used as a cafeteria, a space to eat, allows us to repurpose existing space that's currently in Hillside. And what was nice about looking at it, we looked at the building holistically beyond what we were doing in terms of the addition. We then were able to repurpose some space and make the flow and the use of space better in Hillside. One of the benefits to adding a dedicated space for lunch was that we were able to recapture the existing cafe, transform that into a library learning common space and it's pretty much centered in the first grade kindergarten wing, and really it's a larger space. It's about 1,000 square feet larger. It allows to also create an additional maker space there, allows 2 full classrooms or more to come in and use the space. So we really felt that was also a benefit, because that allowed us to gain spaces in other parts of the building that had been used for lunches and such to provide other learning spaces.
And that's where you're going to have a kitchen installed, I believe.
Well, that's in the cafetorium, but the learning commons we're going to be repurposing, and the current library will then be turned into 2 additional classrooms. So we really feel that in looking at it and adding the space that was ultimately the all-purpose room cafeteria, it serves so many purposes, and then also allows for other spaces that are currently being used for other reasons to be renovated.
Whereas the current footprint of these buildings it's very tight. There's not a lot of space at all.
It is. And
but this is going to give you flexibility in the future.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's when we looked at it, and I think people, I think, as I mentioned, it did start off with understanding we were in need of classroom space just to support programming, and as we looked at the space and we looked at the overall space at Hillside, we knew we were tight, but we looked at some neighboring school districts and just to get a sense of space and how different districts have their, how much space they have at their elementary schools, and we came to find out that we were feeling tight because we are tight, and by adding this additional square footage, it also just allows for what we feel flexibility in the future, a lot of different common spaces that we think is really important to add at this point. Again, we were going to need to add some space anyway. We feel that doing this additional larger space sets us up to have more flexibility.
Well, you've got a list here, and this really does help the instructional program. It talks about the flexibility of scheduling that you just talked about, and goes on to say students could be accommodated at lunch at one time, and reducing the need to stagger lunch periods. Additional space for small group instruction, assemblies, after-school programs, and music rehearsals. You're going to have more room for all of those things, and an auditorium with a viewable, a stage. Modern air conditioning. It sounds like a real upgrade to the to the elementary facilities. Community-wide resource within which you could host events, fairs, and other special gatherings. So that's really an upgrade to
It really
Hillside.
is. It really is.
And could you comment on whether we really need a kitchen?
Right. So when we started to design Hillside, initially it was about adding classroom space. As we started to think about what Hillside currently was lacking, one of the items I identified was that it doesn't in fact have a full cafeteria, it doesn't have the ability to provide a lunch program for students. So as we went through all the different possibilities for Hillside, we did feel strongly that, considering that it is an elementary school, and although we've not had one and not had a kitchen for many, many years, this was an opportunity in doing this bond. It was something that, because we did not have a cafeteria, that the state will in fact partner with us in the cost of that. Adding another gym, we already had a gym space. We had contemplated a lot of different options for that space. We do think having a functioning kitchen is important, not only to be able to offer students breakfast and lunch programs, but just also for our children that may be in need of that type of support, but also just for parents who may not always want to send their kid with lunch. We do think for the price, the incremental cost of adding the kitchen was about $500,000, 42% of that which will be funded by the state. We felt that although it is a good amount of money, this was an opportunity to create a space that could handle having a lunch program, as well as other uses of that it could provide.
I imagine we're one of the final schools that don't have a kitchen.
We don't, and I think we were at a point that with doing a building addition, this is really our opportunity to do it. It was not about, if we did not need to add additional space at Hillside, I don't believe we would be looking to put a cafeteria in at this point, but considering that it was something that we needed to do, add a building extension, again, it was an opportunity to do that as well, and it is something that currently does not exist at Hillside School.
There's a question here that's kind of interesting. Some people have been second guessing the way that the voting was presented. So that the question is, why didn't the board break up the bond into two parts? One requiring certain things, maintenance and additions and so on, and then some other of the other projects separate. So I don't know. I mean, that's something that sometimes schools will do that, and often they don't. But was there any special consideration given to that?
I think the board did discuss it in terms of, because that is something that occasionally you'll see, and depending on the projects. We actually did a two-part vote the last time on the fields, but it was to do with the design of the Burke Estate. And again, either one of them would have accomplished 3 fields. It was just the actual layout. So we felt as though that was something just in the design that people had the option, but again, we were ultimately going to have 3 additional fields built for the district. The concern of the board, or what I think why the board, you're seeing they put it all together, they don't believe that there is, this is not a design feature, it's they believe is what is needed for the school. Obviously the roofing and things like that, you could put them separately, but again, I had talked about the lack of space that we're currently experiencing really at both buildings, and without adding this space, there can be a programmatic issue, because we don't have enough space to support current offerings at Hillside. We've been experiencing that. We have out of compliance spaces, special ed spaces that are out of compliance. We feel that is mandatory. So what the voters are seeing is reflecting that they don't, it is not an optional issue at this point. If in fact they were not going to put, if it does not in fact, if they felt it was an option, then people may not view it as a real need. So I think the board felt very strongly that they wanted to make sure that our spaces are all compliant as required by the state, and also addresses the needed space issues. So they felt it fell under more the must-dos, where occasionally if it was a design issue, like whether you wanted the building on the outside to look one way or the other, I think that's where they may have been okay with the option, but in terms of the additional need for space, they felt it was a must-do.
I understand that. Now, what happens if the vote does not pass?
Well, if the vote doesn't pass, I think, well, one of the things we've done in the past, and I believe the board would like to do this again, is we will conduct an exit survey at the bond vote on the February 28th.
So you'll know the reasons people have to
if
vote for it or against it.
Exactly. So we'll have that information, and if in fact the bond does go down and does not pass, the board, based on the feedback they receive, they will have to go back to the drawing board. In terms of the timing of their ability to, whether they're not required to come out with another vote. They can simply either come up, we can either take money out of the reserves, and there's many options. I don't, but you're not required to come out right away. I think this proposal really would depend on what the feedback they get from the public. They may want, it may take them some time to come up with a different plan. Each plan, it could be a variety of reasons. People may have voted it down. It could be money, and if it's a total cost, then that may be something they need some time to really analyze.
But you'd have to analyze and then decide.
Yes, and so I don't think the board doesn't have a defined plan right now for what that would look like, because again, without knowing the reason for it to go down. I think the last time it was very clear that there was people were not happy with the turf. So the board at that time was able to, in a few months' time, come back and come out with another bond. I don't believe that this bond may not, may take some time for them to rework it. So we're not quite sure what that timeline could look like. Could be years.
Yes, exactly. Well, we hope not.
No, no, not yours, but a year, I guess.
But in any case, I know a lot of people have put a lot of work into this, and we'll see what happens. Of course, again, I'll mention that the vote is going to be on February 28th, and there's all kinds of information available. And just so you know, we're going to be sending out the flyers to homes, and you'll see information on the internet, and we're having meetings and town halls and so forth around the community. So you'll be hearing even more about this, and tell everybody, of course, to watch this video. And between all of that, you'll understand what's at stake here. And we thank you very much and for all the work you've done, especially, and all the other people who worked on the bond.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we're not finished yet. The next part of our tour in consideration of the bond is going to be a walk-around. We're going to go out, and I'm going to be partnered with one of our other persons here who has worked so hard on this, and Joe Montaigne is going to take us on a tour, and we're going to see some of these actual facilities that'll be worked on. So we'll put on our hiking shoes and go for a walk. Joe, welcome. So I'm Charlie Wilson here again. Now this time on the tour, we're going to be showing you the various areas that are projects that we've been talking about that would all be part of the bond. I'm here with Joe, you've met before, and does such a great job of keeping things in good shape. But there are some places that you just cannot keep up with. This is a very aged, venerable, but has seen better days location. You want to tell us where we are and what the plans are?
Sure. We're in the middle school auditorium right now, Charlie, and this area hasn't been used, I guess, in over 25, 30 years probably. Due to the disrepair, we've had roof leaks that caused wall disrepairs. We had roof drains that backed up, and there's plaster falling off the ceiling and on the stage back there as well. And it's just an area that is a beautiful area, but we're not able to use because of all this disrepair. And we really feel like it would be, now that we fixed the roof on the last bond, we're able to consider fixing this up, and we're looking forward to having this space back for the middle school to use.
So this will be a great restoration, and I know the middle school is very much looking forward to it. There's a lot they can do with it, and they'll have their own auditorium, and it's something to look forward to. I don't know if we emphasized enough that there's a lot of fixing to do in terms of the infrastructure, and that can include brickwork. It can include a lot of different areas that over the years have seen better days. An area that you see all around, we're looking at in the middle school at the moment, is the flooring.
Yes.
Can you show us what's been happening here with the flooring? It's pretty old in age now.
Yeah. So what we have, Charlie, is we have old flooring. This building here is over 100 years old.
Wow.
And the flooring probably was redone, but it just, you'll see that every classroom needs repair on flooring. And it's not only the floor that's on top, but it's the plywood that's underneath is kind of rotting away. And we'll show you take some pictures and be able to show better what it looks like. But the majority of the classrooms in the middle school are like this, and there's a handful in the high school as well.
Yeah, you can see it's kind of bubbling too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It needs work. Needs replacement.
Yeah, it needs to be replaced.
Okay, so Joe, where are we now? We're in the
This is the music suite.
Music suite.
Yeah. This is the band room and band and orchestra.
And of course, music is very big here. Kids enjoy it, and it's a very important place. But I think the problem here is you've got some construction issues here. Places severed off.
Well, in talking to the band teacher and the orchestra teacher, there's definitely line of vision problems for the kids. As you can see, these big columns. These are also in the orchestra room as well. Mm-hmm. And not only that, I mean, the floor is in disrepair. There's rotted plywood underneath. We got the spline ceiling. We have the rotted platforms here where they step up.
Oh, yeah.
They actually like to step up here, but they would prefer them to be a little wider and not rotted the way they are. As you can see, like the room is, the storage and everything in this room is just not functional. No. And the program that we have here at Hastings, I mean, the kids are amazing musicians, and I think they just deserve better than what they have.
Yeah, good program, but could use some work for sure. So it should be nice to open it up.
Yeah.
So, Joe, here we are in the downstairs in the cellar, really, and right next to the boiler room of the building, and that's really an area that generates so much energy and so important to the building. You've got an old boiler in there, and I believe you have been having some problems with it, and that's going to be part of the bond as well.
Correct, Charlie. That's, the boilers were built in 1988, so they're 30 years old. And what happens is they're steam boilers, and they have tubes in them. There's about 90 tubes in each of the boilers, and they're failing at a pretty quick rate right now. We had a bunch of work done over the summer to correct some of the tubes that were leaking, but just recently in the last month we've had 2 other tubes leak. So it seems like they're all about to go in sequence here. The 30-year mark is up, and so we're looking forward to not only that, not only getting new boilers, but also a new type of boiler, which is hot water. These are steam generated, which causes you need a lot of heat to generate heat with steam, you know. And with the hot water boilers will be a lot more efficient. It won't take as high temperatures to heat up the building as it does now.
And so you will be doing some energy efficiency?
Yes, we'll be changing it over to hot water. You know, and energy efficiency throughout the building. Also, all the new places will have LED lighting, which is going to save us a lot of money in energy bills, and insulations, and more efficient heaters and radiators and stuff like that.
Let's take a look at the boiler.
Sure.
So we're still on our walkathon, touring the buildings and the various needs and projects that we have going on. So we just thought we'd put this here as a little reminder that, in fact, that the bond vote is coming up, and we'll remind you again before we close off. But we were just looking at some cornices at one of the buildings, and that's another thing, Joe. There is a lot of work being done on the bricks, on the areas that the facade of the building, I should say.
Right.
And that's something not to overlook. So I think we have some pictures that show that. And that work is being done. Is it all over this building?
Yeah, so a lot of the roof that wasn't done in the last bond, we're doing the rest of the roof here. There's parapets that are leaking that we're going to be fixing as well. And the cornice that is around the whole outside of the building, we'll be changing those out. Those are all rotted out.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be changing those out to some impervious material from the weather, you know, so
Right,
that
right.
be weatherproof.
Yep. So I think we've seen some examples of the problems we talked about here that would be addressed in the secondary building. So now I think we should get over to Hillside and look at the elementary.
Sure.
So Joe, now we're over at Hillside, our elementary school, and you've got a number of projects here as well that we talked about before that we can now look at. One, I don't know, as we mentioned it very much last time, but there's a lot of work to be done on the floors here. And one issue is asbestos. Not that it's an issue now, it's not, it's hard underneath the tile, and it's safe. But there is asbestos, and we do, in the long run, need to take care of it. So as you look down these long hallways, this would be another major project to remove that.
Correct, Charlie. This is the first grade wing, and it goes on to the kindergarten wing as well. All the classrooms are asbestos tiles, and as you say, they're not dangerous now because they're not being disrupted at all. But it's in our efforts to become asbestos-free. We're always looking to take that opportunity whenever we can to get rid of asbestos and make it an asbestos-free area of school.
And what is there? This is sort of a corner area. This would be leading out, I think. Would this be the area over here that would be for expansion?
Correct. Yeah, the addition will be built on this side of the building. This classroom would actually become the kitchen.
Oh.
Classroom 155.
Okay, and then you'd have
partial kitchen anyway, half of it.
That's what you talked about.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So we see here, this is a classroom that, here again, the classroom floors that have the asbestos issue. Again, it's safe, it's not a problem now, but ultimately it would be. So this is why we want to remove the asbestos. And that would take place in all the classrooms like this as well. So, Joe, this is really interesting. Before we were talking about the space issues here. And you can see some very crowded conditions, and I can see that in these conditions, you've tried to be very resourceful. And this is really something because I guess you would call this the four corners. Because what you did here, you can explain this, that in order to find space, you took what used to be one classroom and you've divvied it up now for I guess 4 functions.
Correct.
Yeah. Is there a way that we can see that on the camera? It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are spatial issues up here at Hillside, and this is an example of how we had to get creative, you know, and make room so that all the programs can function properly. And although they're not out of fire compliance, they're out of special ed compliance. So.
Not adequate space.
Not an adequate space for those.
And we
areas.
have other places like that need to be addressed.
Yes, all over the building, yeah.
Joe, thanks a lot. This has been a great tour. Are there any other areas we didn't get to see you'd like to mention?
Yeah, Charlie, we're going to be doing some repointing here. We have a brick building, so we always have to make sure that the pointing is done so that you have no leaks inside the building. Also, the roof here at Hillside that we did not do in the last bond, we'll be doing that as well.
Excellent. John is our vice principal here, and we thank you for letting us roam around your school.
Of course, anytime.
Are you, well, you're not, I can't ask you if you're in support of the bond, because you're not supposed to show favoritism. But anyway, congratulations on a great school, and thank you for letting us roam around and see everything that has to be done.
Thank you.
We have had a nice tour, and I think hopefully everyone has a better understanding of what's involved in the bond issue. And don't forget that the voting date is February 28th, so we hope you participate. Thanks for your attention and interest, and see you on the 28th, if not sooner.